card games. On Locomotives. Monster Train is a roguelike deck building and tower defense hybrid piloted by the denizens of the underworld, and it's quite wonderful. An interesting premise, although story is by no means its main focus, tidbits of lore scattered throughout the game hint at a world in which a tentative peace between hell and heaven led to the construction of a railroad between the different levels of hell. But this peace came to an end when elements of heaven started a full-scale invasion. Now that hell's properly frozen over, it's your task to make sure the final fiery spark your monster Thomas carries with it reaches the core, or else all of hell is doomed, and all of these cute imps will have no home left. Monster Train then starts on the campaign map screen, and on this screen, you'll decide between two train tracks in between bouts of combat. Combat uniquely plays out across 3 different floors, followed by a 4th floor which houses the fiery pyre you're sworn to defend. If this pyre explodes, it's game over. The way you defend this pyre is by placing minions on each of the 3 different floors. Enemies will pour in, usually starting at the bottom floor, and after each round of combat will move up a floor until they eventually reach the pyre. Hopefully you've managed to defeat them before they reach that point by clever use of spells and monster combinations. Notably though, enemies normally attack first, meaning it's crucial that you protect the glass cannons at your disposal, or else you'll waste your turn. Your monsters and spells are taken from a selection of 5 different factions or clans, and every time you start a new run you select a main and an allied clan. These clans represent different layers of hell, ranging from the aggressive fiery Hellhorned to the healing-based flora of the Awoken, or the more Lovecraftian-themed aquatic Stygian Guard, though perhaps ironically, they offer some of the more consistent control over your deck's power, as the Stygian Guard allows for fine control through draw and discard mechanics. Each of these clans then has their own focus and playstyle possibilities, and as you pick both a main and allied clan, notably this means a Hellhorned main and Awoken allied run is ever so slightly different from an Awoken main and Hellhorned allied run. The result is a plethora of different combinations to play around with. The main purpose of selecting a main clan comes down to the champion that you'll be using. Champions are powerful zero-cost cards that can be upgraded with devilish powers as the game goes on. Now the way this combat works means that your discard pile is eventually shuffled back into your upcoming draw pile, so making sure that your deck has no pathetic cards in it is of the utmost importance. Your starting cards then are almost certainly terrible, and it's up to you to either delete them from existence or mold them into something useful. Between each battle you decide between 2 train tracks, diverting you into a route more appropriate for a monster-based deck, a spell-based deck, or perhaps offering different rewards such as gold, the chance for a useful artifact, or simply a method of purging bad cards. As each of the train tracks are clearly visible before you commit to one, you can usually quite accurately gauge how rewarding a route will be. Though shop offerings aren't always the same, and a number of these rewards do have inherent RNG in them, you usually get a good sense of the type of treasures you'll be offered, meaning RNG feels properly manageable in Monster Train. In fact, Monster Train even informs you of who the final boss will be, or rather what variation this boss will have, allowing you to avoid playing into his strengths. As such, Monster Train gives you a solid amount of control over this ride. Sadly though, this ride does contain very little sightseeing. Due to the ever-present and titular railroad vehicle interior, combat environments do start to feel a little monotonous. Similarly, your own units within a clan aren't all that visually varied, and the divine enemy designs eventually blend together quite a bit. That's not to say that Monster Train doesn't have a pleasant aesthetic, most cards are animated, the soundtrack is more than solid, and every spell you cast feels visually appropriate, but a change of scenery within the combat screen would have done the game well. From a gameplay perspective, there's very little to fault Monster Train for. As I've mentioned, the different combinations are vast. Each clan feels distinct, and each combination allows for a different playstyle. As you start to finish runs successfully, you'll have more than enough additional difficulties to unlock as well. Combat itself is a pleasing experience of planning your monster positions correctly, as each floor within the train carriage has a limited amount of space, and it's usually important to think about whether or not a unit would be best on a lower or higher floor. Spells are floor specific too, so here this remains a factor as well. The only element I felt was missing was a more conscious decision as to whether I'd put a unit in the front or in the back. For squishy monsters and durable monsters it's quite obvious, but usually everything after the first monster in the conga line is rather irrelevant when it comes to positioning, which is a small but noticeable level of complexity I felt was missing. Finally, besides single player, Monster Train also offers multiplayer options in the form of daily challenges and a curious Hell Rush mode, which has you face off against 7 other players in a race to the core. Within this race, each round has a timer, and if you are too slow, you will likely not survive. It's an interesting mode for a game such as this, but I do fear it lacks longevity, as you unlock no rewards in Hell Rush, nor does it have any form of leaderboards. Nevertheless, it's a fun addition to a game that already has plenty of content. In short, Monster Train, unlike its inhabitants, is quite lovely. If you have any interest in a roguelike deck building experience, I can wholeheartedly recommend hopping on this journey. Monster Train has plenty of strategic depth and numerous cards and difficulties to unlock, with plenty of unique flair. Monster Train gets an 8 out of 10. Thank you for watching, my name is Ben Haas, and I'll see you in the next video.